Some people think that tarot cards originated in Egypt, and that is what I think. In fact, I think all esoteric understanding more or less originates there. I don't believe you are predicting the future with tarot as much as you are tapping into a divine heritage of parts of fortune and interpreting them accordingly. There are plenty of real world and natural world correlations with esotericism. For instance, that spring is initiated with the sign of Aries, which is the cardinal fire sign. Wands in tarot are aligned with the fire element, and thus the first card of the tarot is aligned with Aries. Contrary to popular belief, esotericism is often much more aligned with nature than stereotypical religious beliefs like Catholicism. The earliest popular references to tarot date back to the 1440s and 1450s in the northern Italian cities of Milan, Florence, and Venice. The earliest surviving tarot decks are Italian and were commissioned by wealthy patrons. These decks are likely based on the Egyptian Mamluk deck, which was invented long before the 14th century. The two most popular tarot decks that you've probably seen are the Rider-Waite deck and the Tarot de Marseille. The Rider-Waite was first published by the Rider Company in 1909 based on the instructions of academic and mystic A.E. Waite and illustrated by Pamela Colman Smith, both members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, an organization that believed they were magically and spiritually preparing for a new aeon, that of Aquarius in the 20th century, far ahead of the 60s hippie flower power ideation of the Age of Aquarius that molds the modern perception of everything from astrology to the origin of the peace sign, which is actually Roman. This is the tarot you likely know, with 22 major arcana that are like characters such as the Magician and the Priestess, and the rest are pip cards like the Three of Swords or the Nine of Coins. Here's what's interesting about the Tarot de Marseille. It is obviously influenced by the Torah. The name Tarot de Marseille is not of particularly ancient vintage. It was coined as late as 1856 by the French card historian Romain Merlin, and was popularized by French cartomancers Eliphas Lévy, Girard and Cosset, and Paul Marteau, who used this collective name to refer to a variety of closely related designs that were made in the city of Marseille in the south of France, a city that was a center for playing card manufacturing. The Tarot de Marseille is one of the standards from which many tarot decks of the 19th century are later derived. If you look at the Magician card in the Tarot de Marseille, he has a table with the accoutrement for circumcision, and if you look at his wand, it kind of looks like might be a penis. French people weren't getting circumcised, it was Jews who maintained that practice, so the Priestess card is actually holding the Torah. Interestingly, the Tower card in the Marseille Tarot is called the House of God. It is the 16th card, and if you look closely at it, you see 9 flames and 11 sparks in the sky. This is because this card was covertly meant to commemorate Tisha B'Av, a Jewish holiday that takes place on the 9th day of the 11th month in the Jewish calendar. Pretty interesting that 9/11 involves the destruction of a tower by lightning from the sky, with people falling out in this deck. But time and time again in the Tarot de Marseille, you can see Hebrew culture injected. The shapes of the bodies of some of the characters are in the shape of Hebrew letters. There are other allusions to the Torah and holidays for Jews. You'd be surprised to know how few people have researched this topic. In fact, I interviewed one of the only people to make this Torah and Marseille Tarot connection, Stav Appel, a Torah scholar, on my blog. All of the teachings found in the Torah, both written and oral, were allegedly given by God through the prophet Moses, some at Mount Sinai and others at the tabernacle, and all the teachings were written down by Moses, which resulted in the Torah that exists today. Could it be, however, that what is considered God talking to Jews was actually Egyptian wisdom transmuted to the Torah? I mean, that's exactly what happened to create the so-called Old Testament of the Bible, which is just the first 5 books of the Torah. Consider the fact that Jews were enslaved by Egyptians, and that all throughout history, Jews have been persecuted by prevailing forces. Assume a paradigm in which some Jews caught wind of the Egyptian understanding of parts of fortune that probably originated in some magical star system understanding of the human condition, since we can already suss that the pyramids were aligned with the stars of Orion, and that Egypt understood astrology. This makes a lot of sense if you look into the work of Gary Goldschneider, who alleged, accurately in my opinion, that the cards are based on aspects of astrology. For instance, a person born under the Tower card or on the 16th of the month would have a rebellious, stick-it-to-the-man kind of attitude, a punk ethos, an anti-authoritarian, alternative culture turn of mind. Someone born under the moon, the 18th of the month, would be very in touch with how something feels and their feminine aspect, attached to memories and feelings and trust intuition and faith over statistics and facts. A person born under the magician, like myself, born the 28th or the 1st of the month, would be interested in creation and creativity, otherworldly arts or performance, and occult or supernatural powers. Rarely but occasionally, people have made these Egyptian connections to Tarot. For example, French clergyman Antoine Court de Guesbline thought the word tarot came from ancient Egyptian and meant royal road of life. Helena Blavatsky also connected tarot cards to ancient Egypt in her works, The Secret Doctrine and The Unveiling of Isis. Aleister Crowley based his tarot deck, the Thoth deck, on this ideation of tarot. Theosophists like John Gordon also believe that ancient Egypt is older than people think and that the ancient Egyptians protected the knowledge of Atlantis. I know saying Atlantis automatically sounds like New Age hooey, but consider the fact that America was intended from its inception to be the new Atlantis, a technologically enlightened democracy, something that has advanced exponentially in the last 50 years beyond those what born 100 years ago could even imagine. Many people think that the actual Atlantis continent was adjacent to America before it sank in some catastrophe, and that much of native culture is influenced by the preeminent Atlantean culture, such as their prototype for the United Nations at Chaco Canyon. Suppose the lineage of knowledge goes ancient Egypt to Jews who converted into knowledge of the Torah, Torah to New Testament, which is the whole Jesus racket, and then from there to the Tarot in 1400s Europe, and ultimately to so-called New Age culture in America. Whatever be the case, I don't really think that people are predicting the future with tarot or doing some Salisbury Plain freaky-deaky magic. I think that they're just using an ancient system for understanding archetypes that has been obscured or abandoned, but is very religious in origin. If you Google it, you'll see 3 million results that say that tarot did not originate in ancient Egypt. But I beg to differ. The concept and archetype of a magician that is associated with Aries is very deep set into the Abrahamic tradition and is obviously supposed to represent Abraham in terms of the connection between the tarot and the Torah. There were no magicians before Egyptian culture. Egyptian culture is the origin of the concept of magicians. The Moses tale was originally that of Egyptian hero Ra Harakti. So if you watch the Ten Commandments and you see Charlton Heston, a Christian, throw down a staff and it turns into a snake, that all originates in Egyptian stories. So you're telling me that this Hebrew ideation of Moses doing magical tricks has no association with Egypt? Of course it does, and so does the tarot. The bottom line is that everything that the archaic world believes to be magical is really just a specialized understanding of life, physics, personality types that originated in Egypt that the Jews co-opted, and thus around the world Jews are considered like these magicians. But really it's just third and fourth generation versions of Egyptians' ability to map the stars and to map the human psyche. The Jewish alphabet, or Aleph-bet, starts with the letter Aleph, which is the basis for our letter A. A, Aleph, is meant to look like a ram's horn to indicate its association with Aries, and that is where we get A. The first, the Alpha, Spring, Aries. Incidentally, the Omega is meant to look like a sunset, has roots in ancient Egypt, and is the ending, the ultimate, and that's why it's associated with the sign of Libra. That's why afterlife gods in ancient Egypt, like Mot, who weighs your heart against a feather on scales, are all Libra gods and goddesses. You will find that Libras in this lifetime will have a sort of gothy or death obsession, be sort of gothic, and often be very judgmental, as opposed to Aries, who take the lead in an alpha, Aleph kind of way. Astrology and numerology and tarot aren't just about predicting the future or being able to predict personality types or what's going to happen to them. It's speaking the language of the deeper truth of this world. It's the tools for which you can understand the world around you, sans all of the redundant economic, commercial slop.